Beautiful. They can't stop all of them from hopping this hairstyle. I mean, right? We good? So we're out here today in Brooklyn, walking in the streets with Black Lives Matters. We're upset with how the NYPD is policing the MTA. Can you tell me what's going on and why you're out here?
Pretty much NYPD is pulling guns on teenagers. All right, never mind.
So we're out here today in Brooklyn. Behind me, there are people protesting the NYPD and their policing of the MTA. How do you feel about what's going on? Why are you out here?
I feel angry. I feel very angry.
Why are you angry?
I'm angry because, for one, I'm living in a situation right now where a lot of people can't pay for a Metro card. I'm basically homeless, and I'm living in a housing program, and I live in a housing program for transgender people. And amongst me is multiple transgender people of color, and I worry for them every fucking day. And it really worries me that one of these days, these cops are gonna fucking kill them. And I'm really, I'm scared. I'm really scared, and it's not fair that I have to worry about these girls and just people living in the house. Like, it's terrifying that even the police won't help them.
They got you. So we're out here today in Brooklyn. Behind me, we have many protesters fed up with the way the NYPD is policing the MTA. I see you have the sweater on, the I Can't Breathe sweater, famously from Eric Garner, I believe. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you're out here, what it means for you to be out here?
Yeah, for me, I realized about 4 or 5 years ago that the activism work that I want to do for other Americans as a white person is mostly centered around the work that I can do with other white people. That's how I can be most powerful. So I'm really glad that it's a diverse crowd out here today. I'm here because protests kind of rejuvenate my spirit to keep doing the work. And that work for me is working with other white people on how to learn more about breaking these systems down and refocusing our energy on policies that create racial inequity.
Absolutely. So I know a lot of the conversation here was about fair beating. Do you think the police shouldn't police fair beating, or how should we address this issue? Because that's what I think a lot of this is centered upon.
I think it all just has to do with moderation. So, right, there's a law, it needs to be enforced. To what extent we enforce that law?
A right-wing asshole, just so you know.
To what degree we enforce those laws, I think you have common sense. If you have a police officer that's willing to beat a young child because he jumped over a turnstile, then you shouldn't be doing the job that you're doing. Just absolutely not. So to some degree, yes.
So how should they police it? Because I know we've been having those $100 fines. They've been trying to put more officers at different stations. As I understand, the studies show that if we put more officers in the stations, there'll be less fare beaters. But I know the government over here has also been giving discounts to lower income people. They give MTA passes to lower income people and stuff like that. They give them breaks like that. So what else can we really do to solve the issue? Because police brutality is a bad thing, right? That's obviously. But how do we prevent the crime? Because I don't know if we want to just let the crime go per se. What are your thoughts?
I think again, there should be a. I'm a police officer. No, I'm not. But I'm hypothetically, I'm a police officer in a train station, and I see some kids hopping the train, or I see an elderly person hopping the train, or I ask a question first. What's your situation like? What's going on? My priority should be making sure that the subway is safe. Absolutely. Not that the government is making their money from people who are riding the trains, while at the same time the MTA is allocating some of their funds to the roads, which is how wealthier people travel, no? I mean,
Yes and no, but yeah.
I mean,
to some
let's
degree.
say like the roads are also funded by MTA. So if the poor folks who are riding trains or
buses
just
too, though,
everyday
so,
common
like,
people, that makes
buses
sense,
too.
right? All of that's into consideration when there's a kid or like whoever it might be in a train station, and it's my job to either like chase him down and beat him up.
Well,
or
I
to
don't
have
think
a
they're hoping to
conversation.
chase him down, beat him up. Maybe like
Well,
stop
no,
him,
but
give
that's
him a
what's
ticket.
happening.
It's a $100 ticket right now.
Right, but that's what's happening.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
if
think
there's a
they,
kid-
for the most recent situation where they had their guns drawn for the kid, I know the cops said that they were tipped off that he had a gun. I don't know if you believe that or not, or you take that into consideration, but that was kind of their defense. So I think it's a lot to take into consideration. The cops also, and New York could be a tough area, and it's definitely a tough place to be a cop. Cop suicide rates are high, like cops get killed often.
When's
So
the
there-
last cop that killed himself though in New York City?
I think it was like within the past couple of weeks. It happens very often.
Comparatively,
They have one of the highest suicide rates police officers do.
we have 30,000 police officers in our city, something like that. I think it's like tens of thousands of cops. So comparatively to other police departments, like, that's not the argument I'm trying to make. However, you asked me a pointed question about how we should go about it. I think that more conversation should be being had, and the handouts that we're talking about are really like that's not going to help somebody who just needs to go and maybe doesn't take the train regularly and maybe doesn't even know that that's a thing because they haven't done the research to how to find out how to get on the train. So if they go and they ask somebody for a swipe because they don't have the $275 to go to a doctor's appointment, which might be the only motive that month for them to leave the house for whatever reason, then I'm just going to ask. And if I get asked and that's why I'm getting arrested, that's wild to me.
I know there's tense relationships between different communities of color and different trans communities in New York City and the NYPD. How do you think we meld those relationships, help cool down those relationships? Because these are communities that need to work together, right? The police still need to protect people of color and the trans community too. So like, how do we meld that relationship, do you think?
I honestly don't know, because never in my experience have I melded together with the police, ever. Not even before I came out. Like, they just don't give a shit.
You don't think the police do a good job of policing the city or preventing and stopping crime in general in the city?
I don't think that they do well with people who are poor, people who are LGBTQ. I don't think they do well with anyone in my stance. Like, literally, it just doesn't fucking matter anymore. Like, they're out to attack.
Should we not have the police respond to fare beaters at all? Should they just allow them to fare beat as possible? Because I know we do have some systems here where we're trying to give discounted cards to like poor communities, but is that really, you just think, putting a Band-Aid on the situation? Should cops not police fare beaters at all?
It shouldn't be a thing that we have to pay for the subway, in my opinion. Like, they make probably millions and millions of dollars each year just from the fare. And like, no offense, they can't even get their machines to work right just so you could buy a Metro card. Like, the Metro card shouldn't even be a fucking thing. Like, really. I don't know what a good solution would be, but like, it's just an unfair, unjust system. Like, you expect people to not jump the turnstile when a lot of the times in this city, it's hard to even make money.
Yeah. Do you think, on the other hand, though, if we don't police people jumping turnstiles, that other people would be encouraged to, and then it would just lead to more and more people? The MTA said they lost $300 million in revenue now. I know they have an ad campaign going on. If you're in the metro, you see like with them saying like encouraging people to stop. So do you think it will encourage more people to do it if they see more people doing it?
If there's no turnstiles, there's no point in just jumping them, you know? Like,
So just completely wipe them out? Hey, not a bad. It would be pretty progressive, actually.
pretty progressive.
Just stop doing that.
Yeah. Make
but-
money any other way. Just don't fucking like use public transportation as a fucking like
Sure, but it's
weapon
like
against-
publicly funded, and then like if.
But at the same
yeah.
time, I think it's fucked up in general that 19-year-old man, you know, he just didn't pay the fucking fare, and then 10 or 12 cops just rushed in, and he was yelling, call my mom, and giving them her number. And
You're
that's
talking
not
about the most
right.
recent video of the.
Yes.
I know the NYPD came out and said they've been tipped off that kid supposedly had a gun. Do you think that's just BS coming from the police officers? Because that's the statement they
BS.
released.
He was surrendering. Therefore, I don't believe that he had a gun in the first place. I really solely believe, because I'm 19 years old. That kid is 19. I don't think that it's just not right. Like, there's no logical reason. If he jumped the turnstiles, how would they even know he had a gun?
They said they were tipped off, but I know the police say a lot of things, so I know it's iffy and not a lot of people trust the police officers, so.
Exactly. Like, honestly, it's probably just something that they made up just to fool the media, in my opinion.
Yeah. I had one last question. I know many people are talking about how we need to decriminalize poverty and that we shouldn't arrest people for like things like petty theft, things like jumping turnstiles, things like defecating or pissing in public because these people may not have other places to do it. So do you think we should start decriminalizing things like that, things like petty theft, things like hopping turnstiles, things like defecating in the street or what have you, because homeless people don't have many options is the argument for that?
Yeah. I think that, like, honestly, it's bullshit that people don't have a place to piss in the first place.
Sure.
Especially coming from a homeless person. I've never been on the street. I was lucky enough to have housing.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what it's like to not only be transgender and then on top of that, not having a place to piss and not having a place to live. Like, literally, there should just be, like, public gender-neutral restrooms anywhere. Because, to be honest with you, like, I feel like that would solve a lot of issues.
If we're already doing food stamps, Medicaid, Medicare, then we could definitely use some more public bathrooms.
Yeah.
That just makes sense. Quickly, in conclusion, was there anything else you wanted to say or mention?
Gay rights.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're out here in Brooklyn right now. Behind me, we have some protests about the NYPD and their policing of the subway. Indeed. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you're out here, what it means for you to be out here?
For me, I'm Junior Sedward. You can find me on Instagram. My idea right now is we need to get on the Constitution. The Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments, read them, and they take an oath to uphold it. They swear before they go through training. So we got to call them on it. And they're our brothers and sisters as well, you know what I'm saying? But we got to all be knowledge.
How aren't they upholding the Constitution? Is that what you're saying, that they're not upholding it? What are they doing wrong here?
Okay, well, to speak for myself, they're violating, and not specifically New York, but the system is violating my 4th, 5th, 6th, and I'll just read the 4th one to you.
The 4th is a good one.
Indeed, sir. Thank you.
Right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So what are the cops doing wrong right now? Because they're upset with people not paying the fare, right? They're upset with people hopping the turnstiles. Do you think that's not something that the cops should police? And I'll say this too. I think if there are unjust laws, then it's our duty to break them. But do you think that this is an unjust law by having these fares and policing the fares? How should we address the issue?
Well, my thing is if it's public property, then we're all simply entitled to it. Mm-hmm. So is it really public property, or is it some corporation move, so forth, so have you? I agree that if there are laws, and even through the Constitution, it's not so construed. So if it's
public, like everybody pays for it. I know the MTA complains about how they're losing out on about $300 million in revenue. I'll tell you that that's only like a 5% of their total revenue, but this is still a lost revenue. Do you think that if we let people hop turnstiles, that it might encourage others, like if we don't prosecute these crimes at all, that it might encourage others to hop the turnstiles as well?
I think it can, but it's an individual thing. So even now, people do it regardless, and they may need to, though. Mm-hmm. Those situations happen. Just traveling, get to where you need to go, but the police don't need to engage the force that they do. Mm-hmm. That's the problem.
Yeah. So how could we meld the relationship now between the citizens of New York now and the NYPD? How do we meld that relationship?
All right, so for my opinion, they have to uphold it.
Yeah.
They swear to it.
Sure.
They have to uphold it.
I'm not going to lie. The NYPD does have a very tough job. You know, the NY streets are very tough. I don't know if you're from New York. I'm from New York. You know, people who spend time here know it's a really tough city, and the NYPD does have a tough job. So is there a way for maybe us to help them out too?
Well, we all have to be responsible for each other. First, love yourself. Love you, love who you are, and then you take that patience, this is what I say, take that same patience with those that you love and love you. And so even to say again, these guys take an oath to uphold this document.
Are you big on the Constitution? Because I actually
mean,
I admire you carrying this around. I admire you waving around the Constitution, believe me.
It's necessary because U.S. guarantee, known as the United States Constitution. And they swear
It's
to
interesting
it.
because there's already a lot of infringement on our amendments, right? The Second Amendment is right to bear arms, but in New York City, effectively, we don't have the Second Amendment, right? It doesn't feel like we can't carry legally. So a lot of our rights are being infringed. I wish we talked about the second one as much as we talked about the other ones as well. But quickly, in conclusion, was there anything else you wanted to mention?
Just take the time to love yourself. Push that patience on others. Get a copy. It's $7.98. It's an exceptional value.
Do you think a lot of people here are reading the Constitution and are big on the
I
Constitution?
think some are,
Okay.
but there's mystery when it's not. Read the first 10 amendments.
All right, right there. Thank you so much for your time, sir. I appreciate
sir.
it. Thank you.
Appreciate
I had one last question because we're talking about like people call it policing poverty, and I know they stopped quote unquote policing poverty in some types of areas. So should we not police things like petty theft, fare beating, people maybe urinating or defecating in public? Because these are things that low income or homeless people may have to end up doing, right? So do you think we should stop persecuting those crimes?
I mean, I just went to France not too long ago, and they have public restrooms everywhere.
Sure.
When I first moved to New York from Boston, I was like, man, where do you find a place to pee in this city? It's really Starbucks, and you have to pay to get a coffee there.
Yeah.
Who's doing that?
Yeah.
I don't
More
even do
public
that.
bathrooms would, I guess, be good.
I mean, they suck, but like they're also very utilized.
But you're still for policing. Police should still follow the law and still persecute crime as they see it occurring, right?
There's relationships that we have with police, and police have relationships with us. I don't think that just anything and everything all the time should be out here being prosecuted and every law I don't think it's every time black and white.
If we see more people, if we see the cops not persecuting crimes, though, wouldn't you think it make people more likely to commit them?
No.
No.
If a cop comes up to me and has a conversation with me about beating fair, which I've done before, and the cop came up and talked to me, might be part of my privilege, and he didn't come up to me aggressively as he might with somebody else.
So that's what it comes down to. You think it's profiling? It's when white people and black people, you think they treat them differently when they're fair beat?
I said possibly.
Okay.
Potentially.
Because that's what it sounded like the implication
I've had
was.
both white and black cops come up to me while fair beating. I've done it a handful of times. And I've been treated, variously.
bad?
Yeah, variously. But when I've had a conversation with them and I told them my situation, paycheck doesn't come out till tomorrow or whatever. That was actually at J Street Metro Tech, ironically enough. Then I'm able to humanize myself, and he can be like, all right, cool, well, like, just keep it. And then the next couple weeks, I'm like, damn, J Street's really hot with the cops, so I don't do it.
Well, do you think it's like a race thing particularly? Because you mentioned, like, you've had it with black cops, you've had it with white cops before. Do you think that we're kind of talking about race too much, or it's really the fair beating that's the issue?
I think that the policies in the United States at large, New York as well, even though we're a particularly liberal state, I think that the policies that we have disproportionately are designed to create inequity amongst the races.
How so? Give me an example.
The amount of police that we have in predominantly black neighborhoods and where that's an order given.
But some people say there are more crimes in those areas, which is why they put more officers there. So is that a good thing or a bad thing that we're putting more officers in high crime areas to try to make them reduce the crime?
Yeah, but the more cops, are we really, how many murders have been solved in Brooklyn?
I like to think the NYPD has done a good job in the past few decades. I mean, I guess it's debatable, but New York City's become a much less crime-ridden city.
And also more segregated.
I don't know if it's become more segregated. I think
Well,
it's been just as
hasn't-
segregated. It probably hasn't helped, but it's an interesting conversation. Just quickly in conclusion, was there anything else you wanted to mention?
No, thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, sir. I appreciate it.